Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Player Engaged podcast. Greg here. Today, we are joined by Emily Pierron from Nightmarket Games. Really excited. We just met at GDC, and this is our first podcast coming back from GDC. Emily has a cool background. She was at Eventbase for 2 years, where she was a producer, and now she's at Nightmarket Games, which we're going to learn a lot about today, hopefully, in today's podcast, where she also is a producer. She's from the Vancouver-ish area, so Emily, welcome to the Player Engaged podcast today. Is there anything you'd like to say about yourself?
Yeah, Greg, I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much. I'm a producer at Nightmarket Games. I feel like every studio has like a different definition of exactly what a producer is, especially like every studio I've been to. For us, we do have a development manager who works on the project day to day with the team, whereas I oversee the projects, resourcing budgets and timelines for the studio, and I work with clients and external stakeholders, and then of course helping out with operations. It's a small studio, so you can really make your role what you want it, and I like to help out where I can, so everything gets done. But yeah, Night Market Games, that's my
Sweet. So
new title. Yeah.
a little bit of jack of all trades here, and you already started answering my first question: is kind of what is the role of a producer? And you've kind of laid it out in a bare bones-ish way. But if you take someone like me that doesn't know enough about these different roles that exist out here, is it more like a product manager? Is it a project manager? Is it something else? What skill set would you say you tap into a daily basis that kind of helps you complete your job?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, I do come from a project management background. I have about 9 years experience with that in different industries, but it all kind of comes to the same thing of for me, like my pillars are like organization and people, like just making sure that the people have what they need to be successful in their jobs. It's not about me knowing, like how a technical development situation happens or how this person creates art. It's really me like knowing how I can work with that person to make sure they have what they need. Yeah, with my current role, I'm kind of transitioning. This is the first time I've been off of a project and more overseeing the studio. So I'm not involved in scrums or the planning meetings anymore, which is a huge it's a huge change for me. A little bit lonely, but I'm definitely making sure to, reach out to people more often. But yeah, like the producer role or the development manager role is very project management based. And we follow at Night Market, we follow the agile development process. So yeah, it's a lot of communication.
It's funny, my first job out of school was a support rep, and it was easy to kind of quantify how much work I got done at the end of the day, right? You'd look at it and say, hey, I closed 20, 30, 40 tickets today. It was a good day, right? And then
Yeah.
as you start kind of changing your roles, it's like, what defines success? So I guess what would a great day in the day of Emily be like?
Right. Oh, that's so funny. Because now that I'm not on a project, I don't have JIRA tickets that I'm, updating and marking off. So I have my own way of keeping organized and keeping all my tasks done. I would say a great day for me is when I feel like I made someone else's day better. I still do work with a lot of people in the company to make sure that everything is running smoothly. So I like to check in with people. I most recently did I had like an interview with each person about their workflow to see what they are doing day to day. And then like from there, I was able to make suggestions and like process improvements. So yeah, I would say like the best day for me is when I feel accomplished with the relationships that we have at the studio.
It's awesome. We just came back from GDC as we're talking about it, and you and I briefly met there. And, I've been talking to people and said, I think the best part of GDC was just networking with my own company, because sometimes you don't get enough
Yeah.
time to just speak with the people on your team and understand what the people on your team are doing and how they work. And I love that you put that, because, what you understand, like I'm asking you, what is success for you? You're asking your own internal employees, right? And that can probably help you organize and understand how you need to connect with them.
Yeah, exactly. And like I had the same experience at GDC. We went with there was four of us that went, and like my favorite moments, like of course the sessions and the roundtables and all of the parties were amazing and so much fun, but like just walking to the sessions or just walking home from the parties like with my group, like it was like those interactions were like so meaningful where you don't really get that in a remote setting. So yeah, it was really, really powerful for me.
So let's take a few minutes to reflect on GDC because there was a lot that happened in a couple days. Were
Yes.
there any specific insights or trends that really kind of resonated with you and what you're working on?
Gosh, I would say that the main thing, I guess it's like based on the sessions that I chose for myself and the roundtables, but culture was a huge thing that people were talking about. Just struggling to get a culture or like build the culture from a remote and hybrid environment. It's just not the same as it used to be. You can't lean over to your desk mate and ask a question or start a conversation. Yeah. So I think that like there was a lot of things that our studio we're currently doing. Like we have something called a coffee chat where we're automatically paired up with someone once a week and you talk to that person for 30 minutes. Usually we end up talking about like non-work stuff. We also have like a Friday activity where one person every week is running this Friday activity and they can do anything. It can be an experiment. I always like to teach something, playing a prototype, like it can be what it is. But in our studio, I feel like there are so many holes still where we're not connected. And it was so obvious when I was at GDC hanging out with my coworkers being like, oh, I didn't know that about you. Like we just don't have those moments. So I remember there was one panel that was talking about having like a remote working space. So it's the same idea as though you were sitting at a desk with, in an open office. But this would be so you would just have like a meeting that's always open. You can drop in and kind of work on your own, but have that company there as well. So you can ask questions. Maybe you're working with, like your manager is in the same space. So you can ask questions, you can start conversations. And if you needed to do deep work, you can, of course, jump out of the meeting. That's something I'm interested in looking at for our studio to see if that's something we can implement. Another thing that complements it that I saw from a panel was doing no meeting Fridays and light meeting Mondays. I don't know. Have you experienced this before?
We used to do no camera Fridays, which
Okay.
some people did and some people didn't. But I mean, I'm all down for no meeting Fridays and light meeting Mondays. That makes the week sound great.
I know, right? We had like on one of our projects called Ether Merge, a no meeting Thursday, which the team loved. Like it was really successful until it wasn't. There was people that were on multiple projects. So some projects were doing the no meeting Thursday, some projects weren't. It wasn't really successful there. And then of course during like submission and code freeze, it would get pretty difficult to plan around. But yeah, it's something that I'm interested in looking back at again to see if we can accomplish that.
I like the first of all, I like the no meeting Friday, but I like the open meeting space idea. I never really thought about that, and
Yeah,
it kind of is a way to promote that cooler talk or that water cooler talk that used to exist in offices. Because some people sit here and they just want to shoot the shit with someone, for lack of better words, and I can't talk to my wall
exactly.
all day. The wall stopped talking back to me. So having
Yeah,
someone else on the other line that can kind of talk about what happened in The Bachelor, what happens here, what happened there, right? It's just kind of
yeah,
a fun space to kind of maintain that because we're in this weird place where companies are forcing back to office, other ones are not. So how do you have that balance where you can still kind of communicate openly and freely? That's not a Zoom meeting, and I think even though it is a Zoom meeting, it's a little less hectic
yeah.
or less
Less
formal.
pressure, less
Yeah.
agendas. Yeah, like I would say like our studio right now, it's like the couple of minutes before we start the meeting.
Hmm.
That's when we talk about Love is Blind and we talk about, like Love on the Spectrum, like all of the shows that we are watching right now. But it's just not enough. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how we can, just build more relationships.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing that came up was this was from a really great roundtable. Where one studio was talking about how they have I'm not sure the cadence, but they had an in-person meeting where they would fly everybody out and they would make that like a priority in their budget so that everybody could meet each other and talk to each other. The meeting, because our studio currently has in-person town halls every quarter, but it's kind of like a presentation format, right? So we're all in the room, we're looking at the screen, whereas this other person has it so there's activities, there's bonding things to do. It's a little bit more engaging and in depth. That's something that I'm really interested in hosting and figuring out. Yeah, I think that would be like really really impactful. The
Are you
the
talking?
person even said like after that, every time they do that, like engagement and production is like skyrockets because everyone knows their communication styles and yeah, it's just a new
Interesting.
way of working.
Is it a specific type of topic, or it's kind of
I think this person would do it based on like maybe something they wanted to workshop together. It wasn't like project based, but maybe like here's like one of our studio values, here's an activity to do.
that's fun?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of how I would run it as well, but I definitely need to like look into it more and see what's successful and what people have done so far.
I like that. You mentioned pillars earlier, and I never really understood the concept of pillars until an earlier podcast where I spoke to this guy, Ivan Zagara from Social Point, and he told me kind of here are your pillars when building a game. And not everybody, a lot of people have been speaking about that since then. And it goes back to one of my first questions to you is like, how do you measure success now when you're in a different type of role? And when someone started talking about pillars, I've just kind of like, I love that concept, right? Like it's
Yeah.
almost a way to measure, like, am I building something that's going and aligning with my core values? And I think
Yeah.
ever since then, and I'm not in a developer or a producer or any type of role like that, but like even in my day to day work, it's like, all right, what are my pillars? And I don't know, it's a concept I've learned to come and love because it helps me stay a little more organized. And I am one of the least organized people I know. Um,
I love it. At least you admit it, right?
you got to. I mean, I
Yeah.
envy people that have such great organizational skills. And
Yeah.
like we said in our pre-call, like I had this giant monitor that's just stacked full of crap. It's just like, how am I supposed to find where I'm going? I'm so disorganized. And luckily, everything always, knock on wood, comes together at the end of the day. But like, I'm thinking about these talks that you're mentioning. I was like, that could just be a fun talk. I'm like, why do we set up these pillars? Who's following these pillars? And try and get more people aligned to like, here's how I look at things. And I think you get a better view of your own company when you understand everyone's in something in it for themselves. Like, how can I help you? How can you help me? How can we work together to get towards this joint goal? And again, it all comes back to if I had the few minutes to shoot the shit with you in a Zoom call beforehand, maybe we could figure this out. But we only jump on calls for meetings, so I never really get the opportunity to get to know you, for lack of better words.
Exactly. And I do think that pillars like come hand in hand with values, and like the company values, your personal values, they kind of do have to mesh to make, like a good cooperative situation. Even the way that like I was in a pretty like I didn't know where I wanted to go. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to get back into games because I had worked at IUGO way back in 2015. And I knew I wanted to get back into a studio, but I didn't know how to get there. So what I did was I like drilled down in my personal values, and I only applied to jobs that matched my values. And I ended up only applying to two places, Nightmarket Games and one other place. And I got offers to both. Like it felt like it was such a match. Yeah. And when you create and you like highlight what your personal values are and make decisions based off of that, I think it's just a really like holistic way of living, like you're able to fall back on the values that you can make decisions from instead of having on a struggle. So yeah.
No, I love it. And what you just mentioned kind of goes to kind of, you wanted to come back into gaming, but let's go back to when Emily was in grade school, right? What were you thinking at that time? Like, what did you want to be when you grew up? What were your
Oh my
dreams at that
gosh.
time?
Okay, so I wanted to be famous. That's what I would say to everyone, which meant acting for me. And so I actually did go to university for acting, and that's what I graduated from. But halfway through, I realized this is not the industry I want to be in. I didn't like having to do auditions and kind of like be, I really value stability, basically. And what I found was that I was really interested in directing. So my program allowed me to do a lot of the directing roles for the last half of my program. And then from there, I went to project management. So yeah,
No,
it's
connects
definitely
kind
a
of.
pivot.
Hey, at least you got to try it out and see whether or not was for you or was
Exactly.
not for you, right?
Yeah,
It's not
I'd
like
be
a
dreaming
dream
about
that,
it right now if I didn't.
right?
So
Now
yeah,
it's a nightmare now.
exactly.
Let's talk about night market games. Night
Yeah.
market games, if for people who are listening, might know there's a bunch of Beyblade games, a Slug Terra, Slug It Out, and coming in May, there's going to be a new game, Titan Crash. But the first thing I'd like to focus on is that Night Market Games has been rebranded recently from
Yes.
Epic Story, right? So why? Why rebrand?
Well, there's a couple of factors, honestly. It kind of another like let's go back to values. We actually had I think it was like an 8-week workshop where we ran this with our HR consultant, the leadership team did. where we actually reevaluated what our values were. And then when we came out of that, we we're like, oh, this doesn't really match up with even the title of Epic Story Interactive. And we kind of always like had dabbled with wanting to change the name because it was very long. Like, I mean, my email was emily.pierron@epicstoryinteractive.com. Like, that's just way too long. It was a headache. And also people would completely think that I was from Epic. So I remember the first conference I went to with Nightmarket, people were lining up to talk to me. And then I would be like, oh, no, I'm from Epic Story Interactive, a small indie studio from Vancouver. And they would be visibly disappointed and then walk away. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So it was a long time coming. We did run a studio wide, like, what should we rename ourselves back in 2022. And everyone kind of like, there was a similar theme, like based on like Vancouver and like our nature and like the city. And night markets really, like, there's a night market in every culture, in every region, right? Like everyone can kind of relate to a night market. And there's a Richmond night market, the Christmas night market. There's so many night markets here in Vancouver as well. So it did really feel like something that was closer to our values than Epic Story Interactive was. So yeah, there's a few reasons why we decided to change, and I'm very happy for the rebrand.
Just like an easier email address, right?
Yes.
Was there a sense of confusion from the community? Is it something that you were able to easily kind of let your fans and your followers know? I guess, is there any like, oh, I wish we did that instead, or thoughts like that?
We weren't doing it by ourselves. We have a marketing consultant, Mike Gallagher, as you know. He really kind of guided the ship for us. So it was like he kind of told us what to do, whereas like we would do the legwork. I think it was like a really well planned out rebrand. It happened on March 11th, where we switched over all of our accounts. We had a whole blog post about why we're changing. There's like everyone's going on like, excuse me, different like podcasts and different like, ways to like reach out and really explain like why we are rebranding. So I think it was a pretty successful way to do it. It wasn't like just a sneaky like, oh, let's change our icons, let's change our names. But yeah, so I think it's pretty successful so far.
Great. Yeah, it seems like it. And we got to, again, meet up at GDC. Mike was there, and we don't push sales here on the podcast, but Mike is great. Mike Gallagher, he did a podcast.
He's awesome.
Helped us build our own community ourselves. So we love Mike, and I'm glad to hear it's all going successful. I mean, it's a great name. It fits it well based on the night markets, and I'm excited to see what comes.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about a topic that you seem passionate about, which is psychological safety, because this is a topic that Mike let me know that you're an expert on. And when you and I first spoke, I thought I knew what psychological safety in gaming was, because we do a lot with trust and safety and protecting that side of the world. But I was wrong in that. So can you give our audience, our listeners, kind of a high level idea of what psychological safety is in gaming studios?
For sure. It's very different from trust and safety.
It is.
Psychological safety, it's the belief that you will not get punished or humiliated for voicing your thoughts, ideas, concerns, or questions. So it's not specific to the gaming studio, but it is very, very impactful. Like you could really take this for any kind of career or any kind of industry. But yeah, it's just being safe to say your ideas, and that really is how innovation grows within a studio.
So what gets you so fascinated? And it's a great topic, right? I'm not trying to come at it in a different way, but like, well, how do you get fascinated in a topic like this, and how do you start digging deep into into psychological safety?
Yeah, so I first heard about it on a webinar that I was listening to by someone from BC, Tina Mary. She was discussing it in the way of like for your project and how to be successful in your project. And when I heard about it and I heard the definition, I was like, oh my gosh, that is something that I've never been able to articulate, but I've experienced so many times in my career. So many memories, honestly, were like flooding back to me. And one that really stood out to me that made me want to dive deeper into this was I worked at this studio so long ago where it was like the behavior of this one manager was just completely ignored. I would say that this person would like be maybe classified as like a toxic genius. Like I know that that word gets thrown around a lot, but they were very good at their job on paper, but their interpersonal skills and managing skills, leadership skills were non-existent. They had a direct that was really distraught working with them. They were always walking on eggshells when they would ask questions or for clarification. They would get snapped at in front of everybody. And I remember feeling like the secondhand embarrassment for this person. And then what really, like the day that like it kind of like all brought it together for me, this person, the direct, was sitting at their desk, like sobbing into their arms because they were so like stressed out and like just confused, right? And their manager was right beside them, just like ignoring the whole situation, typing away on their computer, talking to other people. And I was just like, this is not okay. And I knew deeply something was wrong, but I just didn't know at that time, like, what to do. Like, I didn't know how to handle the situation or, and you know, like a lot of this stuff, like, kind of comes from top down. Like, your culture is kind of the worst person at your studio, you know, like everyone kind of has to like be their best selves. So, yeah, like I immediately flashed back to that moment thinking like, I can't believe that like was happening in this huge studio and everyone saw it happen and nothing really came of it, you know? So yeah, that's really what brought me to psychological safety and how I want to run a studio and make sure everybody is empowered to say their ideas in a safe space.
I think that's awesome. I think most, if not everybody, can talk to a manager they either had or they've known that they think that they're God's gift to the world, and every idea that they
Yeah.
have is right. And I think being a great manager is listening and hearing what your employees have to say and taking it. Right? Maybe it's not always the best idea, but entertain it. And I mean, you just defining kind of that secondhand embarrassment is.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you had, and maybe I don't know if you did, but you did something about it. You spoke up, but and maybe not directed to that person, but you wanted to make a change, right? Again, many people probably don't even know this is really a thing, right? Or what to name it. They just know they have a crappy manager that's not helping enable them do what they need to do.
Yeah.
How do you maintain a culture like this of openness and making sure that everyone is heard, like when you're looking at night market studios, right? Like how do you put those principles into place there?
I would say it's kind of like an uncomfortable one because what I do is I just talk about it. I talk about it with everybody. The first time I mentioned this with the studio was I gave a presentation on psychological safety, and then at the end we ended up breaking into like breakout groups, and everybody just talked about their experiences and like how they have been treated in the past, how it made them feel, like their experience with actually psychological unsafety, because it's really more obvious when it isn't safe, but then when it is safe you can feel your team like getting into the groove and thriving. So I do a lot of like just having that those spaces, also having kind of forms for feedback, like anonymous feedback or just a safe space where you literally say it out loud, like, this is a safe space, you won't be punished for anything you say here, or like, this is a confidential conversation, like, I will not tell anybody about what you say. Like those types of like, just, you know, like saying things out loud so that people understand what they're getting into. Another thing that I implemented was I guess not implemented, but I was digging into the SBIN feedback model. So it's situation, behavior, impact, and next steps. There's a ton of them. There's like SBINN, SBIIN, like, you know, the acronyms. But for us, it's SBIN. And the idea is that you give feedback to everyone all of the time. So the point of it is building trust with your team and with the people you work with every single day by giving positive feedback and realizing like what they're doing. Like, oh, the way that you handled this conversation, like, I really appreciated it. Now, like, everything is better moving forward. So then when you need to give some correcting feedback, the person already trusts you and it's not an awkward situation. They know it's coming from a really good place. Yeah, I think it's a lot about communication and just being open and vulnerable, and it's scary, but in the end, it does work if you can do that.
It's funny how, I'm just taking notes here, sorry, but like, we talked about communication, and this whole conversation began talking about kind of the open meeting spaces, communicating, with this all work from home thing. I was reading a report earlier, and it's just like people are becoming less herd mentality. We used to have this herd mentality as people where we wanted to be in groups, we wanted to be in larger groups and do things together. And since COVID, whether you want to say it's COVID or not, it's almost like part of us broke where people aren't as engaging with one another anymore. It's more siloed off. We're all working from home. Like I would not want to go back to the office if I had to, but I mean, I do kind of miss that camaraderie with my team, right? And being
Yeah,
having that open communication. It's hard when it's remote, and it's how do you balance these things of open communication while you're working remote, while trying to find times to do things, and it's a lot of things to juggle.
it
Um,
is.
I wanted to ask you a question. To reverse what you were just talking, what happens if you're on the receiving end of this feedback and you're at a company that maybe doesn't really have the right tools for you? Are there anything you can recommend or suggest to people that might be struggling with this?
Yeah. I've definitely been on both ends where I'm giving feedback in a not great way and I'm receiving it in the same way. And I look back at my younger self and I really wish that I didn't take things as personally. I think that's a huge, huge skill to learn is that like when you're working in an environment, like everything you do is towards a common goal, right? So when you receive feedback, I honestly like I take a breath and make sure that I'm actually listening to what they're saying. One part of the feedback model is that you have to ask, are you open to receiving feedback right now? Because a lot of the times, maybe people aren't open and they wouldn't be listening to you and it wouldn't even be worth it. So once you take a moment and say, like, yes, I'm open to receiving feedback. And just know that, like, maybe the person is describing it in a personal way, but you kind of have to like figure out what is this feedback actually about? What were my actions and how did it impact somebody else? And what should I do moving forward? Like yeah, I think if you're able to separate it so that it's not a personal attack or a personal conversation, then it makes your whole life easier.
We used to after for an older company, we would butt heads every once in a while, but after work we would all go grab a beer and we'd have a good time. And it's one of those things that I'd say, if we're out grabbing a beer afterwards, having a good time together, at least we know what we're arguing about at work is related to work, and we're both looking to what's most productive for us and for our customers. Whereas if we were
Right.
at grabbing a beer and all fighting, we knew there's just true, for lack of better words, hatred there. But we
Yeah.
knew kind of how to separate that balance. But I'm wondering if there's any things like Slack or Discord groups for people that can get that, just kind of get these things off their chest, like looking for people to talk to. Obviously, there's like BetterHelp and stuff like that, which is separate, right? That's more of a, I think,
Yeah.
but I can't think of the word here.
What's like
But
a third
yeah,
platform.
are there any
Yeah.
groups that you're aware of online where maybe these types of communities exist, or maybe not even yet?
Yeah, honestly, there's so many. I'm a part of so many Discord groups. There's like weekly conversations where people will like ask a question and then everyone will give their answer and start a conversation. When I'm really in a rut, I will definitely look to Reddit for help. It feels like Reddit has like infinite
Everything.
answers, and I really appreciate it. But yeah, it's also something that like you could even start within your own studio, like having like maybe like a lunch and learn, or like some kind of like not a lunch and learn but like a weekly like chat where everyone just sits down and kind of like talks about anything, where it doesn't have to be like work related, or it could be, like there's just having like that kind of open space is really helpful. Reddit.
from 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 everything here, Reddit. If you want to feel good about yourself, go to Reddit. If you want to feel bad about yourself, go to Reddit. Just
Yeah.
go to Reddit. They got everything there.
Well,
It seems, and I might be making a jump here, but based on everything you're talking about, it seems like you're in a good place and you're in a happy place. And it seems like you feel like, and I think I've read this, right, that happiness you think is a way to kind of help elevate people's work and get more done, right? A happy staff is a hardworking staff. I don't know if that's a saying, but
now it is.
can you can you kind of, I mean, you do link, I think, productivity and happiness together. I think, I don't know where I read that. Maybe I just made the assumption based on everything that we read. But are there any ways you approach this on how to make sure that everyone's happy? How do you make sure that everyone's kind of bringing their A game, even if they're in a rut? And maybe this isn't as easy a question, or
Well, you are correct. This is the happiest I've been in my career so far. I absolutely love this studio that Nightmarket Games is. And I do think it comes from top down. Like the first day, like Chad, our CCO, like I remember being in a meeting and him being like, "Oh, I made this mistake," and like he just like so effortlessly was talking about like a mistake he made and the impact it had and what he's gonna do moving forward. I was just like, "Damn, like that's I've never seen that." Like I was so impressed. So like I do feel like giving people the space to make mistakes is huge. In terms of like productivity and processes, yes, this is my favorite topic for sure. One of the first things that I implemented at Nightmarket Games was I call it the single source of truth. I remember when I started, I just couldn't find information anywhere. Like I was trying to like look up a ticket. There was no like, I was like, what's going on with this ticket? I have no idea. You know, there's like conversations happening through video and DM. There's like Teams channel. There's Jira tickets. There's emails. Like it was everywhere. And it was really causing like miscommunications and frustrations within the team. Like people were being frustrated with each other, but there was no like clear, like, this person's wrong, this person's wrong. It was like, no, the process is wrong. The people aren't wrong. So now what we do is for our team, we use Jira as the single source of truth. So everyone knows that when you look at that Jira ticket, it's going to have the most updated status and you're going to be able to see the whole history of what's going on there. And it like immediately people were giving me feedback saying like, this is amazing. I was able to like get something done right away. Like I didn't have to like go and have a conversation with someone because I saw what they had written. And like in the long run, it also like helps build that history. So when you're starting a project, you're wondering about, oh, how did that project use that tech? You can go and look through and see like what they used. So it's stuff like that. Like even just like recording your meetings. I know people like when I say I record all my meetings, people think I'm crazy, but it's so helpful to like go back and reference your notes or even just like send it to someone that, you know, is in a different time zone or was maybe on vacation. You know, these little things like recording your meetings, taking notes, even just the single source of truth. Like these things seem kind of small, but they do make a huge impact when you do it, when you're using it consistently.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I feel like a struggle of every job I've been at is my information in Google Drive? Is it in
Yes.
SharePoint? Is it a video or an email? Did you Slack it to me? And there's just so many different tools to communicate and different systems to be looking at. It becomes a frustrating thing, and I love that because yeah, taking that away and saying, hey, everything you need will be in Jira, and maybe something else elsewhere, but Jira will tell you to go look here to figure that out. I think that
Exactly.
makes a ton of sense, and that's great to hear.
Yeah.
Um, Usually about halfway through, which I think we're past, I do our rapid fire question round.
Cool.
You get to answer some rapid fire questions here.
Let's do it.
All right, Emily, what did you have for breakfast?
I haven't had breakfast.
Oh my goodness.
It's
Most
9
important
a.m.
meal of the
or
day.
10 a.m.
I guess it is 10 a.m. If you were to go to a bar, what drink are you ordering?
Diet Coke.
What is the last book you read?
Crucial Conversations.
What is the last game you played?
Stardew Valley.
And what is your dream vacation?
Dream vacation. I guess I'm going to Greece in 2 days.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. What part?
I'm going to Thessaloniki.
I've never heard of that, but
No
okay.
one has.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
safe travels.
Thank you.
Um, as a producer at a gaming studio, you were looking to come back to gaming. You're at gaming.
Uh-huh.
You're off the hot seat, by the way. What is the next logical step? Well, if Emily could have anything to do next in her career, and I feel like most people say, I don't know what I want to do next, but what would be the next logical step if something you'd like to see accomplished for your own self?
Well, I always say that I want to do what Dennis is doing. Dennis is the COO of our company. I really, really kind of like I enjoy working with him and I enjoy the tasks. So I am doing a little more of that kind of operation stuff. But I really just want to be able to like going back to culture. I really just want to be able to build that culture in the studio and be known for as a studio that is like the best place to work, makes really fun games, and is growing like that. I really just want to see the studio succeed because I think that's how I will succeed as well. So anything to get that done.
If you were you had to give an elevator pitch to our audience about Night Market Games type of games. Obviously, you're going to say best place to work. It's fun. How would you describe Night Market Games?
Nightmarket Games. Currently, our games are like match three action games like Slug It Out and Beyblade. We work with a lot of IPs and brands, and that's really what we specialize in. Although we are releasing our own IP called Titan Crash coming in May 2024. But yeah, like we are really good at working with brands, and we're really good at like building fun games. So that's what I would say about that.
Emily, I think that's all the questions I have for you today. I've really gotten to enjoy our conversation, learning about the studio, learning about psychological safety, just learning about yourself as well and what works from what you've learned at GDC. Is there anything else that you would like to just share with our audience while you're here?
I would say just everyone be open and ready to take on any kind of conversation. Be nice to everybody, just the normal things.
Not enough people say that on here, but everyone should just be nice to each other. We're
Yeah,
all humans at the end of the day, and we all just want to play video games. So let's just all be nice to
exactly.
each other. Well, we'll have Emily's information on our Player Engage website and podcast and everything, and we'll have Night Market Games there as well. Emily, this has been fantastic. Again, thank you so much for teaching us about both the producer role and psychological safety and everything. And I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate it.
Have a good day.
You too.